Jeanette, what's happening? How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thanks for carving out some time.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited. This is what I'm so passionate about. So
Yeah,
this is like so exciting for me.
I personally love, obviously, the path of development on mindset, physical and mental and emotional, and you know, at at, at least for me, it usually comes from a deep personal experience. Like at some point, like something changed. I was like, man, I really should do this, and it kind of stems like fitness and like mental well being and all that. So, for you, what was that thing that may have pulled you into that, fitness well being in the first place? And then follow up to that is, when did you know that you could, turn this into your life's work?
Yeah, I think for me it was pretty early on. From high school actually, when I took a fitness and nutrition class, actually it was like cooking class slash sewing class. And I realized my grandmother is truly a Southern belle, right? Grew up in Alabama, and so the food that she cooked was from her background, right? So what she felt she was doing for us. And then I realized that what she was cooking for us was just not the best, right? And so, and I think it's the aha moment, the education when you find out, what you're eating really isn't as healthy for you. That was the light that changed for me. Immediately, I stopped eating meat. And from high school on, I have not eaten beef or any kind of like red meat at all. And so for me, it was just that moment of knowing what I was feeding my body was just not healthy. So that shift for me was immediate. And so it kind of started there, um, literally in high school.
What's interesting is, so I'm Filipino and I have a same thing, it's not the healthiest of foods, like fried, it's high in fat, it tastes amazing, no doubt about it, and I think even for me, I have these moments of, well, am I, kind of making too much of a departure from who I am and kind of roots at some point? Because, I'd go to parties and people are like, oh, you're not going to eat. Like, no, I'm okay. It's interesting because it's so common to just be like, well, take this, indulge this. Like this is, kind of the state of everybody. That there is some tension, So at some point, you're kind of like, I'm going to kind of go this way, and it's not easy. It's not as easy as it sounds to just say I'm going to, because there's a everybody what they know about you, and you kind of making a departure from that. How was that for you? Was it also something that you kind of experienced too?
Yeah, I definitely experienced that. And what I tell myself every day is that Jeanette, you are the 1% of this population that does what you do,
Mm.
that is disciplined enough to get up every day, work out, and eat well. Not everybody does that. And then the second thing I tell myself is, Jeanette, do you want to be like everybody else?
Yeah.
See, that 1% of excellence just doesn't happen. It's a choice. And I choose to be excellent every day. And so that's where that mindset shift comes in, because I think a lot of people are just okay being okay. And that's not living your fulfilled life, just, sort of going by, like getting by. It's more than that. And I think the intention behind what you do every day is even more important.
Would you say that with a lot of, the folks you work with, some of your clients that, I've always seen this, that it kind of starts with the mindset, how do you typically, where do you start with that?
Right? I always say, we're going to get personal because I find the reason behind a lot of everything is something that personally happened, whether it was good or bad, something triggered whatever happened to them in their life to sort of get them to where they are today. So I always say, let's get personal. Tell me what happened. And from there, it's like an ocean, right? They're just so willing to share those things with me. And I think once we get past that piece, they realize that whatever happened to them is really not their fault. They're using food as an excuse, as like a clutch to deal with whatever they're dealing with. So the emotional connection behind food is always something much deeper. So we kind of start there first. And then from there, that's when I build plans and, we talk and, I really get them to understand that you're not feeding your emotions, you're feeding your body for fuel, but how else can we deal with our emotions? So that's key.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think that if you don't kind of get to the root, it just kind of stays surface level, right? You'll kind of, especially around this time, right? Folks like, all right, I want to kind of try something, do something different. It's my resolution, right? Mid-year, it's like all done. Do you kind of see a commonality, like biggest mistake that folks, kind of have regularly when they are starting their own, kind of health journey?
Yes, I think the most common mistake is they do too much at once and they fail miserably. See, I think people think you have to change everything about who you are to get on your
Yeah.
health and wellness journey when it really is a journey. So that means taking small steps every day. So you don't really have to change your whole life in one day or one week. What you can do is change one thing every day to get you to the point of where you want to get to. So taking those small steps every day is ideal in terms of your wellness. Because I mean, I've had clients basically say, well, I mean, I cleaned out my entire refrigerator. I did this, which is great. But at the end of the week or the following week, they're like, oh yeah, I just fell off. I just couldn't do it. So,
Did you, for me, I had a couple years ago, I read Atomic Habits by James Clear, and that was such a big thing for me. It was again not focus on the outcome, focus on the small actions that lead to the outcome. Um, when you're working with a lot of folks, is that also take them one step at a time? Because I think a lot of folks are like, I want it to be rapid, right?
hmm
Is
hmm
Do you fight that with some folks too and say like, look, let's just start with one because one is leads to two to three.
Yes. I mean, I fight with that actually in like 99.9% of all my clients because they're like, Jeanette, I want to be snatched by tomorrow. I'm like, love, that's not going to happen. But, I really have to tell them, I want you to get to the point where you are enjoying the journey. And I don't think people don't think of the end. They think about what's now and they don't allow themselves to enjoy the journey because they feel like the journey is just so hard. And oh my God, I have to do all these things. But then learning to embrace all of the hard things, honestly, is what makes you great at the end. So I really have to allow them to sort of journal through this whole process as well. And I tell my girls all the time, today is day one. At the end of these 90 days or, however long we work together, you will see the growth and how proud you're going to be of yourself, right? Um, and I think that journey on the other side is the real sort of gift, the prize in the end. And I try to get my patients to see that, not get so caught up in what they're doing today, but let's look at the future, what your life is going to be when you get there.
Mm. Were there any, kind of going back to the books, any books or, particular speakers and authors that really kind of help shape your point of view?
Yeah, so I would say I mean, Atomic Habits is definitely one of my bigger ones, but I listened to this podcast. It's a ex NFL player, something greatness, and I can't think of the name of it. Lewis Howes is his name. And I have to tell you, from an athlete, because I was a professional cheerleader for the Washington Redskins, as a former athlete who turned his life around and has the most amazing guest, it's so inspiring to see how he went through, like so much. He was molested as a young boy, became an athlete, lost everything, and then started this podcast. It just, for something about his story, just resonated with me. And I think that just it really helped me just sort of, I want to be the best version of me so that I can be the best version for my clients. So you have to stay embraced in other people who can help you get there.
I love Inky Johnson, and I didn't know about him until just a couple of years ago. And for anyone listening, that Inky Johnson was like a star college athlete, NFL prospect, and then had one bad game, and then boom, he ended up almost getting paralyzed, and then losing his left arm, and for him to kind of say, I'm on this journey. I'm doing everything I can. And then so quickly pivot and say, well, I'm going to trust the journey because now I had to take a hard right. I was supposed to be NFL. I did all that for a number of years, like 2 decades. And all of a sudden it was like, nope, nothing anymore. what now? And I think, what I like about what you're saying, and I think what a lot of people can kind of resonate with is, the journey is it's so clear up until like it's not. And then after that, like, well, now what do I do? And I think trusting the process and saying, all right, well, kind of going back to the steps you talked about, let me just start with one thing, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. The one thing, because everybody can do one thing.
Hmm.
Not everybody can do several things at once because a lot of us aren't good at multitasking, but we're good at doing one thing that we can focus on and do it well.
Yeah.
That's important. Hmm.
When you're working with a lot of your clients around, or patients rather, I like that they had mentioned that as well. There's, just on the diet side, I'd love to kind of get your take on this from, plant-based to, full-blown carnivore. Like, is there for you, and kind of everything in between, right? How
Yeah.
do you think about nutrition and how do you speak into nutrition without getting lost into extremes? Because I talk to a lot of folks who are I typically on one end of the spectrum, especially with all the information out there.
Yeah, so I'm simple. And I think for most people, simplicity matters because there's just
Mhm.
so much out there. And I am really big on the Mediterranean diet. I love the Mediterranean diet just because it is rich in olive oils, it's rich in, omega 3s, all the things that have been linked, studies have shown extensive research, that the Mediterranean diet is really linked to longevity. So I really focus on whole natural foods. 3 meals a day. I still believe in 3 meals a day. I believe in snacking in between. I believe in lots of water. And I'm a firm believer in supplementation, especially for women over the age of 50 who are perimenopause, menopause, like the diet, everything about your body just changes. So your needs are going to change. So again, it definitely depends on the client, but overall, it is super basic Mediterranean 3 meals, two snacks, lots of water, and sleep. Keep it
Sleep.
simple. Yes, that's one of the most underrated things that people just don't get enough of, the sleep.
How do you recommend folks to kind of get better sleep then in general?
So I have them to do like a weekly challenge.
Mhm.
So 1 week, I want you to get 1 extra hour of sleep. So if that means maybe doing 20-minute naps throughout the week, right? To get up to whatever you have to get up to. If that means, playing the Calm app and, doing something on your app, maybe taking the TV down 30 minutes before your sleep. We come up with a few ideas that will work for them, and then we plan it into their week. So every week, once when we meet, that's one of the goals. Like, how much sleep did you get? What did you do? Did you implement the 20 minutes or whatever we decide to do together?
Something that I'm hearing a lot and definitely sounds like it's working for you as well is, like what gets measured gets managed. But the other part is I heard about a study that where folks, if all they simply did and they were trying to lose weight, they just started to track, they just started to write down, have a journal. They kept the same foods, but just by tracking it had, I think by the end of the year, this study had found that, folks had lost, something like 5 or 10 pounds just by being conscious of it. Right.
If you don't try, I tell my clients, if you don't track it, it didn't happen.
Like prove
Like,
it.
right. Like if you didn't track it, it didn't happen. And so that's part of the accountability. And I think that's what is missing a lot in some of the programs, is the accountability piece because people aren't accountable for what they do. They just give them something, but they don't hold them accountable. So the accountability piece for me is every day check in with me. What did you eat? I want to see photos. Like it's really down to the nitty gritty. And even if they are working with my fitness pal, I want to see that every day. So it really is tracking and writing things down and visually seeing and measuring. I think you know, we've gotten so used to the large portion. So I was doing some research on salads, and it was a salad at uh, the Cheesecake Factory. So one salad at the Cheesecake Factory was about 1,500 calories for one salad, right? Just imagine people eat that entire thing.
Yeah,
Imagine. Yeah, right?
you know, it's funny, Nehemiah, when we had interviewed him and we are kind of talking about, these supposedly healthy things that you'll do, and then you track it later. And he's like, it was like one of the worst meals I've had in my life. He had told me that he went to like Olive Garden, and he was eating like soup and salad, and then they give like breadsticks, and it was going to be a meal, it was going to be indulgent, and then at some point it was just like, man, I consume like 8 to 10 breadsticks, right? And you have like a little bit of salad, and all of a sudden you got 4,000 calories, right? And but it's kind of under the guise of being like, well, it is a salad.
And that's one thing I really teach my clients is, although it's a salad, that doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy.
Mm,
Although it's fish, it doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy fish. Like, I'm not a fan of tilapia. Like, I think salmon is the
mm,
best, and farm raised salmon is absolutely not. I mean, that's already been linked. I mean, like, deli ham is considered a number one carcinogenic now, right? So it's like all of these things that people think is healthy. It's been so mislabeled, and it's unfortunate because they're trying everything, and then all of a sudden they're like, nothing's working. And I'm like, well, write down what you're eating for the last 3 days.
mm.
And 99% of that is processed food.
I had a question about business. I'd love to get your take on.
Yeah,
So
sure.
we work with many Fortune 500s, and obviously you've grown a very successful business. So from when you started it, going from I'm passionate about this, I'm turning it to something that can turn into my livelihood. What insights could you tell us about what you learned about leadership, growth, anything that maybe you didn't expect at the beginning that today is like so prevalent?
Yeah. So I would say the first thing is you have to grow yourself consistently. You can't grow a business and you're still in the same mindset that you were like 6 months ago. You have to continue to grow, learn, and be flexible in getting advice from other people, because there are a lot of CEOs who are just so focused on one thing and they miss a lot of amazing ideas. So I would say you have to continue to grow yourself. Personal development is non-negotiable. That's one thing, you have to grow yourself. The second thing is you have to give people what they actually need, not what they want, but what they actually need. There's a big difference between what you need and what you want. Like, I want to be, I could say, 20 pounds lighter, right?
Mhm.
But then what you actually need is to learn how to eat, right? So that you can get 20 pounds lighter. So you have to determine, with your clients, what you need is not what you want is not what you always need. And but your business, what I want for my business is not what my business always needs. So I have to be really clear about what my objectives are, and is that clear for my vision, right? Because I want to stay pretty crystal clear with my vision. And my vision is to inspire, to make women feel extremely proud of who they are, to give them confidence, all while learning the process of eating and living well. And I would say the third thing is sometimes you have to put money to the side, and you really just have to give good products.
Mm.
Because if you can, you can have the best products in the world, but if you don't package it correctly, then it doesn't work. So that's really important. Social media is huge. You have to have a great you know, mail list, email list, and you have to be consistent. Don't ever stop on your business,
Yeah.
because if you don't show up for your business, no one else will.
I love what you said about the value piece. We were just talking about that the other day. I think that the revenue always comes after the value,
Yep.
right?
I
Absolutely. And I think once folks kind of get a taste of the value, like, all right, well, and it sucks because like there's so much social proof that says like, well, I need to see all this, and then I'll kind of give you the money. It's like, well, you have to kind of experience this. And I think businesses that do well, and businesses that, like you said, show up constantly, give you what you need, maintain the value. Those are the ones that really have like the long-standing relationships, plus also just customer advocacy, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Customer service is everything. I was reading, and I can't remember what I was reading, but it was saying something that you have to over deliver on customer service. So over deliver, I mean, just give them like the best experience. It goes such a long way.
It's so interesting that, just that added touch that is certainly doable 99% of the time, it's like exponentially more valuable than the other 99%. And I think that that's, and it goes well beyond like hospitality, right? It kind of goes across all facets, right? Like you do this with your patients, you do this with, like even like your friends and family. Like when you show up at the times when it's just really important, it's a 10x return, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think people feel when, you know, your business is really genuine, because there are a lot of businesses out here that just want to make money, but I never want it to be that way. I want it to be like your partner,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I think that partnership is so important because it's customer service, right? It's really being there as like your friend, right? Like, I want my clients to say, hey, Jeanette, CEO of Fit with Jeanette. I mean, not only is she, you know, the CEO, but she's a really good friend and she really values me. That's what I want people to come away with my business as saying.
I love it. What about, and I love your opinion here, obviously in corporate America, there's tons of like well-being programs and wellness programs. What's your opinion on where, many companies, and it could be small to medium businesses all the way to, again, the Fortune 100s, where they can improve on their take on well-being programs?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the fitness programs I wish would have more nutrition based
Mm.
like partnerships because you can work out and exercise as much as you want to. But if you're not teaching people the fundamentals of basic nutrition, how to eat, why is hydration important? Like those things just sort of delete everything that you've been working towards. So that is the huge gap that I see in a lot of fitness programs is that there's no nutrition component whatsoever. And I wish that they would focus more on that. Now, I will say, the clinics that are happening now, the MIDI clinics, when they're doing all the GLPs, I have to say those are literally more comprehensive programs because they have a nutrition component to it. So, like to me, that's a really good business model because you give people something to help them lose weight, but you're also helping them with nutrition. So it's like those little things to me are some of the things that I wish, like especially for the fitness, that they would add a nutrition piece to it.
So I had spent about 9 years on the Google brand side, and it was interesting because during that time, this is probably about 2010-ish, there was a big discussion around, all right, well, we're going to serve folks really healthy things. And it was this, again, I couldn't agree more. I think starting with education was really important, first and foremost. It was like, well, before they're going to love kale and quinoa, we kind of have to let them know the food pyramid's not probably so great for you. Processed carbs formulated by companies that produced processed carbs, right? Like it's a narrative that folks have kind of been told and accepted. And this is a question that I think has never really had like I think a solid answer because folks are kind of like, ooh, I don't know, that's my personal preference, but I'm not really sure how far we can go. And at the time, we had a global food lead, and we have this, a lot of roundtable discussions saying, well, how much of it is just education and putting the information on a silver platter versus nudging versus imposing? And even if we're saying, well, it's probably not good to eat cheeseburgers and processed fried foods all the time, is that really something that we're responsible for? And it was a really interesting, like 50-50 kind of debate. Where do you think businesses have that responsibility on that line of
Yeah.
shaping their employees' health and well-being, especially in, corporate America?
Yeah, I think it's 99.9% the responsibility. No, I wouldn't say 99%. I would say half. I think it's 50% the person and then 50% the company. And the reason why is because as a corporate leader, you are responsible for the culture of your company. right? You are responsible for how you want your mindset of your people. How do you want your people to feel on a daily basis? And if you are stressing your employees out, guess what? Productivity declines significantly, right? So you are responsible for a lot of how you implement programs for your employees. I think that's integral piece of the productivity of your employees. So you have to feed them well, you have to treat them well or give them options for stress relief. You have to offer programs because a lot of times employees don't understand that people go through a lot of things personally. And when you go through something personally, you bring it to work. So sometimes there is no disconnect. So how can, if something like that is happening, how can we treat them to become better as a person so they can be better employees? So I think it's 50-50, honestly.
Yeah, there's some stats that we've been kind of following for a while. They call it the, $500 billion problem, where, 70% of employees who are on site Monday through Friday, daily caloric intake is done while at work. Like 70% of what they consume is going to happen from the second that they're in or around work to the second that they leave. And the food and nutrition that's designed for them will have real impacts, right? So kind of what we talked about earlier, Snickers bars versus granola bars, right? Like sugar crashes, moodiness, lost productivity, turnover, like all that causes organizations to lose billions of dollars. And then ultimately, the high insurance premiums because I'm eating Snickers all day. And then now all of a sudden I'm, more at risk for cardiovascular disease. And, one of the biggest contributors to businesses' high rising costs is insurance premiums. So it's like
Right.
going all the way back to it. It's kind of saying, well, I can agree more. I think that that's definitely been the sentiment that we've seen, which is like businesses aren't devoid of the responsibility, and as is the individual, because it's any extreme doesn't work. With individuals like, well, I'm just kind of doing what the organizations like given to me, and like I don't know what happened to me. What like and was it Google? They call them like the Google 15. It's like you just have so much free food that you just gain a lot of weight. Like, well, it's kind of what they serve, right? And then there's the organizations where it might say, well, it's not really our place to say, so we're just gonna put it out there, right? And I think that it does have to be a shared, and that's what we see a lot too, where a lot of the clients that we work with, it's, well, here's what we believe, but where would you start? And it's like, well, kind of like what you talked about, getting personal. We talk to the customers first, the daily on-site employees, and say, well, what do you want? And it's interesting because it's always kind of like some spectrum of like pizza and amazing things to like, here's some trends to like just really traditional, like I just want something that doesn't make me feel terrible an hour later. And like you said, designing that the same way it's designed for each one of your patients has to be designed for organizations at scale in the thousands.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm glad you said that because there's something that just came to thought for me is like when we're talking about carbohydrates. And the trend was, this whole thing, you don't go without carbs and you lose all of this weight. And then, you have all of the, so there's so much out there. But I tell my clients all the time, you cannot live a healthy, fulfilling life alienating a food group from your diet. But like, does
Mm-hmm.
that really make sense? There's just so much out there for people, and they just don't know.
It's interesting. There's a book I recently read, and it was like, my wife has actually the one who kind of turned me on to this, because it was talking about you know the spike that you have, especially for women, in your hormones, which has direct impact into your ability for um, losing weight, to gaining muscle mass, to retaining muscle mass. And some of those things, it was interesting. It wasn't that carbs were the enemy. It was just that, sweet potatoes, awesome. Pringles, not so great. And that
Right. Yeah.
and the impact of the processed carbohydrates, spiking sugar, spiking insulin, and just folks not realizing that, oh, that little teaspoon or tablespoon that just kind of goes unnoticed has caused this, like, ripple effect that they're and it's same thing. If they're not telling you about it, you might not even know. Like, oh yeah, I
Yeah.
have a tablespoon of sugar every single morning with my coffee. And you're like, well, that's a root cause to you wanting more snacks and things later. It's like, man.
Yeah, right. And this whole thing about cortisol has been
Mm,
such a big topic. lately, especially for menopause and perimenopause women and stress, which cortisol really does. I mean, scientifically, biochemically, yes, it definitely doesn't help people to lose weight. But I think there's still some misconception about cortisol that people still don't really understand. But that's just, some of the things that, are with hormones and all the things and the research that they're doing is, being linked to weight gain. So I just feel like there's just so much out there, like you said, and I'm really happy that there's so much more information out here for women over the age of 50 going through perimenopause and menopause, because before there was nothing.
Mm.
It was your doctor will give you something for anxiety and you're supposed to figure it out. And that was it. There was nothing else on menopause. You figure it out on your own. And so I'm really happy to see the research is finally listening to women, that they're actually losing their minds, not because they are getting older, it's just because they have no estrogen. So it's been
I
really interesting.
I have definitely found a lot of interesting things that just, where my mind was blown with this too. A book I read recently was called How Not to Die.
Mhm.
And it talks about this too, where it's like, the entire healthcare industry, doctors have, I think, something like less than, I'm probably gonna get the stat wrong, but it was a very small amount of hours that were focused on nutrition versus, man, prescribed medication. Right. And so have you heard of Brian Johnson? So
No.
he's like his whole thing is saying, foregoing all of traditional practices, knowledge, everything like that. How can I extend my life as long as possible? And so that, as well as, can I also live a high quality life too? So I'm kind of curious if you have an opinion on either like longevity versus just quality, or maybe it's both.
Yeah, it's both. I want my clients to live a well-lived, fulfilling life for as long as they can. And to me, that means being healthy. That means, and so there are so many definitions of healthy, right? Like we can talk about healthy, people being healthy, but really to me, healthy means free of disease, right? Like you're not feeding into becoming or making your body disease, like eating foods that are higher for you in terms of cancer or things like that, right? So for me, it is really getting, clients to realize that you can do both. And I think some people think you can only do one or the other, but why can't you live the best life as long as you are meant to be here on this planet, right? So you can do both. I think it's really important to not make people feel like it's one or the other. Like you absolutely can live both, hands down.
Yeah. Um, Love the conversation here. I have probably, I'd say, one more like major question here, which is,
Sure.
we're talking about, I love the point of view, like wellness. I couldn't agree more. I think it's holistic. Live, think, how we show up for ourselves. If there's someone who's listening right now, and it could be, someone at home, or it could be maybe someone at a large Fortune 500, and if they just kind of want to start, take one small step to feeling better, like you said, like feeling better, and the entirety of what that encapsulates, what first step would you encourage them to take?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I would say if it was a CEO listening, do it when you're not ready. Do it anyway, because it's never going to be perfect, right? I started this business like literally with no real direction. Like I just started because I was so passionate about it, right? And for anyone who is looking to start a business, do it even when it's not finished. Even if you don't feel like it's your best product, do it anyway. Because if you don't start, you're going to continue to lag behind and say, oh, it's not ready, it's not ready, it's not ready. And then you're never going to launch your business. So do it anyway. And for those people listening who want to just do something, I would say start with one thing every day. If that means getting up earlier, 10 minutes earlier, do it. If that means taking sugar out of your coffee, do it. If that means something that you enjoy, like taking your kids to the school bus or just taking a 5-minute walk, do it. It's one thing that you can do every single day to make your life better. And remember that this is a journey. A journey means you do something every single day. It's over a long period of time. It's not just for like this point in time. I always say it's seasons. It's several seasons of you being the best version of yourself. So do something every single day, just one small thing.
Love it. And I kind of on the note you just mentioned about just kind of get started. I love this quote. It's, there's never a perfect condition or circumstance. However, starting is the perfect condition.
That's
It's like
right.
just doing that, right? So,
Yeah.
Jeanette, I love your point of view, your insights. Where can folks get in touch with you?
Oh, yeah. So you can reach me at fitwithjeanette 126 at yahoo.com, or you can go to Instagram and at fitwithjeanette. And my website is under development. I'm so excited for this new website. We're going to have nutrition, all kinds of nutrition stuff, videos, all of that. And that's coming soon. So I'm really, really excited about my new website.